It's a wintertime cleanup, and this caught my eye as I was driving down the road. It's Ozito brand, it's mains powered. It's a 1500 watt EcoMow. I don't want to spend too much time looking at this. It doesn't look like it's had that much use. The catcher looks like it's had even less use. The catcher looks like it's in pretty good nick. It'd be a nice little bite of home. But often when you look underneath these machines, it starts to tell you a story. Looking at the blade first, this is the cutting side. It doesn't look like it's done that much work. This blade is very rusty. Mind you, we've had a number of very wet years. The other side looks like it's done very little work as well. Let me just turn this over to see how it feels. At least it turns, it's not making any strange sounds. Maybe that's a good or a bad thing, I'm not quite sure. It's a bit harder to turn the other way. In fact, I'm putting a lot of effort in to get a spin in that direction. Looking at the wheels in this for them, they look a little bit scuffed up. They've had a little bit of use, put it this way, they're not brand spanking new. But when I look underneath this section here, where the blade would be spinning around, flicking stuff out, this looks to be in pretty good nick. When a mower's hard working and doing things, that area there gets pretty much dinged up, but this looks pretty clean. Like I always say, the rubbish piles talk to me. That's saying to me I haven't done that much work. We'll get to how old this is very shortly. I also notice here, there's some goobies going on here, which doesn't look pretty, a bit of rustaroonies. I'll put this over on its top again, and then I'll find that little plate that's going to tell me a date. I think from memory on this model it's underneath here. Let me just flick that way, and let me get this up, and it's going to be a horror because the sun's getting fairly low in the day. Let's take a look at that there. Okay, that's reading to me Ozito ELM 1536 electric lawn mower, 1500 watt. I can see a make, date, year of 2020-12. I'm shooting this video in June of 2023. So we don't know when it was bought, but we know when it was thrown out, and we know when it was made. It's sad, quite sad. This time I'm quite curious to capture this lawnmower. It seems to have its power lead still. It seems to be working in all the right zones. So I drag it home. And I'll be giving this lawnmower the challenge of cutting some fairly long grass. If I wind back a year, I remember finding one of these lawnmowers thrown out in the curbside cleanup. I was lucky enough that time to speak to the people who threw this lawnmower out. Just like the one I found, this other lawnmower had been thrown out in fairly short time. It wasn't very old. The owners of this lawnmower told me it was very powerful. It did the job they required it to do, but it had a design fault. And the problem in the lawnmower was the area where the handle of the lawnmower connected to the base of the mower. That area was all minced up. The plastic there had failed. That one critical failure point had rendered this lawnmower into a piece of landfill. Thank you, China. So I suppose the solution is you go back to your local hardware. In Australia we have Bunnings, and you go and buy another lawnmower. But would you buy the same lawnmower again? I love to go to the biggest Bunnings that I can find, and I like to get the lawnmowers on the floor and give them a run up and down the aisle. You know why I do that? Because I get a feel for how the lawnmower is when I'm pushing it or pretending to use it. I think that's very important to do. It's a bit like when you buy a car. You take the car for a test drive to see if it suits you. But in a visit to my biggest favourite Bunnings in the latter part of 2023, I come across a totally reformatted lawnmower section. All of a sudden, the lawnmowers are up in the air. They're up on the racks. They are cable tied to the racks. There's no way you can grab one to take it down to the floor to see if the lawnmower suits you. Some people will find some lawnmowers to be too heavy to deal with. You quite often find that, especially when ladies are using lawnmowers. Sometimes you'll get a lawnmower on the ground and you'll move it around and you'll notice how light it is, or maybe how skinny it is. And you sort of say to yourself, well, no, this is more like a toy. This is not a lawnmower. I think it's important to have a lawnmower down on the ground so you can see the way the wheels are lined up either side. I've been caught out with that on my Ozito lawnmower. It's also nice to feel if they're front heavy or back heavy. It's really important to just feel how they corner. Some lawnmowers are easy to move around on the ground, others are a little bit more tricky, and mainly because they're quite heavy. But the reason why I went into the big Bunnings is to just scrutinize the latest version of what Ozito throw up as a 1500-watt lawnmower in the latter part of 2023, especially to look at the design of how the handle connects to the bottom part of the lawnmower. Have they improved that failure point? You're probably thinking, Leo, just buy the lawnmower to test it out. Surely you've got enough money. Well, the fact is, this stupid video is never going to earn enough money to cover the cost of this very inexpensive lawnmower. That's sadly the facts about YouTube these days. I'm pretty sure the monkeys at the zoo are paid more peanuts versus YouTube producers. The only lawnmower I can afford to review is one I find on the junk pile for free. And I did notice at a local charity shop, and I couldn't believe this, they had junk lawnmowers, and one of them is an absolute piece of rubbish, the green one, selling for $50. There's $50 on both of those lawnmowers there. Honestly, they should be paying you $50 to take this rubbish away. Outlandish, they had $50 on this rubbish. There's absolutely no charity in ripping people off. It's as simple as that. I get annoyed when I see charity shops ripping people off. It really gets to my nerves. Anyway, it does seem the updated Ozito 1500-watt lawnmower has a different design going on with the handle that goes down to the base of the lawnmower. And the lawnmower that I picked up off the side of the road has failure points going on the handle section. Mind you, whoever owned this had actually inverted one of the pieces in the assembly. Thinking back to that previous time I've looked at this lawnmower, I remember very positive things being said about this in product review websites. It was getting some good high scores in all sorts of different areas, and it's one of these lawnmowers that's very inexpensive, and people were getting caught out for the fact they had to go and buy a power lead, which was anywhere between a third or half the cost of the purchase of the lawnmower. I'm pretty certain that the people buying these very inexpensive lawnmowers are going to struggle with the cost of buying the correct power lead these lawnmowers require. But it seems the equation in the end is we're dealing with a product which has a 3-year warranty. Mind you, the two that I found on the side of the road were within their 3-year warranty, but it seems the consumer equation in all this is very simple. Here's a very inexpensive lawnmower that if it lasts you 3 years, well, hey, throw it out in the rubbish pile, go buy another one. The thought of repairing one of these is not part of the equation. We just love to keep throwing money towards China. It's fantastic. Okay, I have the beautiful Ozito 1500-watt lawnmower at home. Remember, it was dated late 2020. And the lawnmower I naturally use is my Ozito. It's petrol powered. It's getting up close to 10 years old now. And I use it with the mulching plug. So the cut grass is sent back down into the grass. And to mulch grass, you need a fair bit of power. I've got some nice long grass to set the Ozito 1500-watt against. I'm going to use the catcher because it doesn't have a mulching plug. When I cut the long grass, and you'll see rulers to show you the height of it, I'm going to set the Ozito mower to its highest cutting level. Even the Ozito in mulch mode would struggle to cut this grass. I'd almost only have to cut half of the width of the mower if I was going to try and cut it with the Ozito. If you're wondering the decibel rating on each mower, and you're probably thinking that noisy petrol Ozito, well, listen to this. The Ozito, it says 96 decibels. And the Ozito is 75 decibels. I'll explain it like this. The two mowers have got two totally different sounds. And sure, the Ozito is surprisingly noisy. So I'm going to let you listen to the Ozito mower cutting the grass. It's very important to listen to the motor as it's cutting the grass and hearing how it's working against the grass. It's quite surprising. have to admit I was really impressed. I was actually really surprised at how powerful this little lawnmower is. It's the best bit of Chinese throwaway junk that I've ever picked up off the side of the road. The grass I was cutting, it wasn't bone dry. There was some dampness going on in that grass. It had rained a few days earlier. This mower did not hesitate with the biggest challenge that I threw at it. That's why I wanted you to hear the raw sound of it cutting the grass. And the two things I didn't like, one was the power lead. I'm just not used to cutting the grass and dealing with the power lead dragging behind. And the other thing was that catcher filled up really fast. Mind you, I was cutting very, very long grass. Considering how magical this piece of rubbish is, why was it thrown out? I have been reading bits in forums where people talk about these mowers struggling against wet grass, against mowing on hot days, and there is a thermal cutout on these mowers that I think a lot of people misunderstand. And I notice there's a message on the mower. Mind you, it's upside down because that's the component that was put on upside down on this mower, talking about the thermal cutout. The more updated version of this lawnmower, which is in Bunnings in 2023, the one that I couldn't afford against what I'll make on this video, it's also got some very positive things being said in the product review area, some very interesting pictures that sort of show what I showed in this video. Little cheap Chinese lawnmower cutting the longest grass in the world. So this newer Ozito 1500W ELM 1545 seems to be scoring some fairly high points with people who've gone and purchased this and then hopefully done an honest review. Very similar to what's said about the model before it. I would normally come in and read a few of these and get some comedy relief from what's being said, but unfortunately I've had a couple of viewers have some very stern words against the things that I do when I come in and read these reviews and pull out one-liners from what's said online. They get quite cranky in the way I deliver those verbals. And as I've learned in particular over the last couple of years, it's always that few percent of people who tend to wreck it for most other people. And it gets back that you just can't please everyone, but I tell you what, online, sometimes that 1 or 2% can be extremely destructive when they get going. There's one review I'm going to read here. You need to understand the fact from the fiction with these people who put reviews up. Rebecca from Albany in Western Australia, she's done 2 reviews, but she says she's a beginner. So maybe this is telling you who's written this. Ozito 1500W corded lawnmower. A year ago, she says, love it. It's easy to put together and use. Being a single mum, it's also quiet enough for me to use when the kids are asleep. Well, hang on a second, Rebecca. When you go and look at the decibel rating of this lawnmower, which I have done, it's rated at 96 decibels. So Rebecca, it's curious because most other people say they struggled with putting this lawnmower together, especially the catcher. And also my suggestion to you is very simple. Take your children to see an ear specialist, because if they can sleep through 96 decibels of roaring Ozito power, I think they've got hearing issues. Anyway, maybe you learnt something in this video, maybe you learnt absolute zero, but I tell you what, I like my cheap Chinese junk to be totally free.